Okay, thank you. I'll try to be brief. My dilemma with the question of relationship with journalism and artificial intelligence was basically that a lot of researchers were asking different questions. There were at least two sides. One where the nature of the machine communicator was at the focus, and it was examined in the context of journalism, while other authors like Carlson wanted to examine journalism in the context of larger discussions of automation. So the question is, what is the real dilemma for journalism research, like the first question or the second one? And of course, the third one, the larger social context, political and economic interests in creating automated journalism. So my focus was maybe to examine these larger discussions of automation first. But even when I tried to do it, there was another split into two perspectives. First, the human-machine communication, where the first thing is, again, what machines do as communicators, not just as mediators, and how people conceptualize those machines. While in the end, the last thing that Lewis and associates were concerned was the implications for the self and society. And there were two sides. One that were thinking about reflection of human values in technologies, developing this human-centric perspective on artificial intelligence for journalism, and the other one was challenging the anthropocentric assumptions of journalism theory. Now, I'm not convinced that these authors actually completely understand what challenging anthropocentric assumptions of journalism theory means. And this is my question for today. So basically, I wanted to ask if we want to talk about the technology, the artificial intelligence, we have to talk about the humans who actually developed it. Even if we want to talk about the reflection of human values, we have to talk about these humans that incorporated their values in this computer technology. And one of the first pioneers of computer science was John von Neumann. And in this little text on this book cover, they basically say what he was doing simultaneously. He was constructing the computers, one of the first electronic computers. He was working on the construction of atomic bomb and of game theory that he used both in military sciences and in economics. So of course, he as a person was an inspiration for Stanley Kubrick's movie. So I'm just trying to understand why when we talk about digital technology, we don't talk about how it was designed by the military during the World War II and later, and it was simultaneously developed with game theory, the nuclear deterrence, war games, and artificial intelligence. Because, of course, the question was how to understand a human agent in any social field. So if you want to understand a human agent in journalism, and we want to introduce the notion of artificial intelligence in journalism theory, we have to see what this new field of artificial intelligence actually defines humans. And it has several reductions. First of all, in the case of Neumann, he defines humans as natural automatons, basically a reduction from living organisms to some kind of mechanism that is automatic, but it is nevertheless natural. He needed this in order to say that something artificial, in this case artificial intelligence, can mimic, imitate, simulate human intelligence. But the only way he could do it is to basically reduce the human being or human intelligence to the level of natural automata. And then later, as we see at the bottom of the text, he wants to consider living organisms as if they were purely digital. And this is, of course, completely different than what the researchers of automated journalism are saying. When they talk about reflection of human values in technology, it is actually that, for example, by some of the pioneers of artificial intelligence research, it is the other way around. The human is to be modeled as a digital computer. So we have this problem of understanding what artificial intelligence is. In one of the latest reports of automated journalism, artificial intelligence is defined as the autonomous system that can be taught to imitate and replace human cognitive functions. But actually, it is not imitating human cognitive functions. The human was redefined by John von Neumann in 1948. So some of the critiques, like Arthur Brooke, says that actually artificial intelligence bears almost no resemblance to how biological systems work. That is that traditional artificial intelligence can be even, like Nick Bostrom says, extremely alien. It means that it's not that technology is reflecting human values, or maybe it is, but which human are we talking about? Someone like John von Neumann, but that human is to be modeled as a digital computer. If we change and we understand the human agent in this different way, there will be some kind of reconfiguration of journalism. Now, of course, I mentioned in the title another of John von Neumann's associates, John Nash, who basically just follows John von Neumann in the case of game theory. What we see here is, again, not so human cooperative games like it was portrayed in the movie, the biopic 20 years ago when it was made, where we had several scenes, but I just can mention this one, the bar scene. Everyone can find it on YouTube, where he uses basically game theory as a cooperative game where men cooperate in a matchmaking dating game in a bar, right? How can they get a dance or a date with the girls? And if he, of course, in the movie creates a cooperative game theory, in reality, he was actually working for Rand Corporation on war games theories, meaning non-cooperative, very competitive games. And of course, this is all connected to artificial intelligence research that's, again, not resembling human intelligence. One of his papers is of course, explicitly non-cooperative games, even though in the movie it's completely the other way around. Basically, the Hollywood decision to create it, to make it look better. So this idea that we now can basically simulate human agents in some kind of experiment first was introduced in the military settings and then in economics. So Philip Mirowski had this idea that he's of course economics historian, that at some point economists stopped to look at the human agents in the real markets, but to simulate these markets according to game theory. And of course, when they simulate markets, human agents are not part of this simulation, but artificial agents, which now replaced the human agents. So, like he says, machine rationality at some point became the constant in the neoclassical economics. And humanity was simultaneously being rendered more machine-like. This is, of course, based on all on John von Neumann's theory that basically, again, created the first computers, worked on nuclear war game theory, and now redefined the humans and the human intelligence. Like Mirovsky says at some point, that the mind can basically be conceived as working with the principles of cybernetics. All those principles are basically cybernetic. And they have all been pioneered in gun aiming algorithms, basically something that was important for military weapons and not for the human agents in social sciences. So later, when artificial intelligence was developed further, we had this problem of how it differentiates from human intelligence. It is basically just understood as computation and information processing. They're not going into talking about consciousness, emotion, autonomy, creation of new ideas. Basically what the journalists do, interact with the world and try to tell some human story or a story about human condition. For Herbert Simon, one of the pioneers, it is the emotion is something else. For example, in one of the quotations is that emotion is just an interruption mechanism. This is how he can simulate human emotion, or at least he thinks that he can simulate human emotion by creating some kind of interruption mechanism or random error in a computer simulation. He believed that it is easier to automate professors and naval planners than it is to automate bulldozer drivers, meaning basically that intellectual labor is easier to automate, including journalists. His ontology is basically the fourth quote, right? The word human being can be substituted for ant, because human beings viewed as behaving systems are quite simple, just like ants, because he is just simulating their outer behavior, not their inner structure. He doesn't care about it. His example is airplanes and birds. On the outer side, they basically do the same thing. They fly, right? Even though their inner environment is completely different. Therefore, it can be artificially simulated. And this idea is, of course, at the basis of automated journalism. So if that is how the artificial intelligence that we should incorporate in journalism theory, I think we have a problem, and doesn't mean that it has to be the same cybernetic simulation of artificial agents on a market, but it means that someone wants to create automated journalism that cannot actually in any way surpass human journalism. Even some authors would say that texts produced by artificial intelligence can be the so-called convincingly human, so generic, passable, but not really the height of human journalism. And that journalists, just like in the case of human agents in economics, have to be now trained to think like a machine and accommodate to the technology so they can support the technology. But this is not what Meredith Broussard or Nicholas Diakopoulos were saying. They were talking about reflecting human values in journalism. So some of the examples, if we see that Diakopoulos is talking about journalistic values of truth, of community, of deliberation, in the examples in the United Kingdom or Sweden or Washington Post, I don't think that we can have this value of community if we have several templates, several stories that can be with certain local data just duplicated and created, and we can create 200, 400 localized versions, localized news versions, or localized versions of sporting reporting system, where you just have the same template for the whole country, but then you introduce individual player statistics or score changes. So how can this lead to what Broussard is telling stories about human condition, while actually it's just creating a massive amount of content, which is of course commercially driven. It is not there to assist journalists. Some researchers basically think that we will just use this new technology for the data journalism, for something like deep analytics that will develop investigative reporting, but actually the commercial pressure to create more amount of content for more consumers, for more subscribers, for more advertisers is at the bottom of it. And if we follow this line of argument, where the lower cost of information production is the main key driver, we have a problem with so-called investigative reporting, because gathering facts it will depend on some news sources, information sources that are political economic, but not independent, it's not, it cannot be considered as some kind of embodiment of journalist theory. There are, of course, other aspects that should be also examined, like this idea of crowdsourcing journalism, like basically that many citizens could, once the templates are finished, incorporate their localized data and create something like some kind of Wikipedia journalism, again, more in line with the commercial pressures than with creating better journalism. This another idea of this mass personalization, of creating many approaches to the same news, right? Many texts that are customized in order to be read by many, some possibly so-called audience of one, is of course again the threat for the public sphere, and in the end it is also a question of cybersecurity. If you rely on information production solely on machines, the information warfare, sometimes international or just within one country, can also create trouble for creation of what was today is called the fake news. So there are a lot of problems created by relying on digital technology when it comes to journalism. I don't think that there are research enough, especially this background of artificial intelligence that is mostly not in the human or humanist studies in the human realm, but in the military, economics, etc. So let's finish with that.
Thank you very much. I will mute myself, and if we would have questions from the floor. So Mato, do you have a question?
Yes. Okay. So Nikola, thank you for a nice presentation of your topic. I have a question. What is your view in this perspective of use of artificial intelligence in journalism? Do you see it as something positive or negative?
Well, I'm trying to say that just that they haven't thought this through. There are definitely positive aspects to it, especially when it comes to processing a lot of data. So data journalism could be one positive way of using artificial intelligence. The problem is, of course, this is not the only way. The other way is automation of journalistic texts in order to create the large amount of content that should be produced for subscribers, and of course, just it is profit oriented, but it's actually lowering the quality of the journalist practice. So at the same time, artificial intelligence in the case of data journalism can increase the quality of some analytical investigative reporting, but at the same time, other kinds of journalism, especially localized ones, will be challenged by some concentration of media organizations like Washington Post that is creating localized versions for every town in the United States. So at that point, it will probably not be good if we rely on universal templates created in capital cities that have to tell us stories about something that happens in local towns anywhere. In Croatia, in the United States, it doesn't matter because just because it's cheaper, it's a lower cost of information production, it loses its community value, community journalistic value, and even this idea that journalism is basically telling stories about human condition. You cannot tell it if you automate many texts, many news that you consider not deep enough, not worthy of investigative journalists, that will be basically the only ones that can use this artificial intelligence in a more, let's say, profound way.
Okay, thank you. There were several studies. I hope now we will not have problems with audio. I have to mute the Domagoy's computer. There are several studies about robot journalism or automated journalism conducted in Sweden regarding the content produced by algorithms, and on the other side, content produced by real journalists. And what they found is that the audience can't recognize the difference between 1 and 2, or artificial intelligence produced content and content produced or written by journalists. Also, another study showed that the audience prefers content written by algorithm because they think it's less subjective, or it's more objective than the one biased, let's say, because it's written by algorithm instead of being written by a real person journalist. Also, to give a context to your topic, in the last 30 years or 40 years, from the early 80s, we are witnesses of different automatization process in different aspects of journalism. And as a result of it, the people who were working in print press lost their jobs. In broadcast journalism, from team of 8-10 people working on one single story, or now it's reduced to 2 or even less, to 1 person doing the same thing. Journalists are now on this front line. And of course, all of this was happening because of the cutting costs or money reasons or economical reasons. Few weeks ago, the British Guardian published the opinion written entirely by algorithm. And it was opinion written obviously by artificial intelligence. Why? To explain why it's so important, or why we shouldn't be afraid of robots or artificial intelligence. So there is a huge future for application of this kind of technologies. I can't take the positive or negative standpoint regarding the topic. For sure, just the job. Sure, there will be also the content produced by artificial intelligence. I remember a few years ago, we had the conference here in Dubrovnik, and the guy from Automated Insights, one of the first US companies making this kind of programs, they said that in that year, and I think it was 2014, 2015, that year they produced more than 1 billion of stories. 1 billion, not million, 1 billion, 6 years ago or 5 years ago. So can you imagine how much of content is already produced and served to us, not only directly as a robot or artificial intelligence produced content, but through the press agencies like Reuters and Associated Press, etc., etc. And this case from Guardian actually proves that it goes beyond daily news, beyond simplified content. It goes in direction of more analytic, more serious journalism that we couldn't think about a few years before. This is just my comment. It's not question, but if you have any input to give, please.
Well, of course, this is now maybe even the difference between paradigms, some approaches. There was always a question like 50 years ago, somebody will say that, you know, the media content is fine, and the other side will say, no, it's the culture industry and stuff like that. So basically, we have this different schools of thought that can see this in a different way. I remember that South Korea has very positive cultural attitude towards technology, and they, I think, love automated journalism the most. While in Europe, it's a little less, it depends from country to country, but they are more suspicious of it. But the question is, for example, in The Guardian, it says at the beginning that it is written by artificial intelligence, but then there is a footnote there that says that parts of it were written by human journalists, basically. So at the footnote, it's not written by artificial intelligence. At the beginning, it was. But it doesn't matter. This idea, for example, that artificial intelligence can, by itself, create very deep analytical content has at least two problems. One problem is that if we rely completely on the AI to produce content, it will rely solely on what information sources. Now, how AI makes this decision? I believe, I don't know, the government source about something, even though this government is corrupted, right? Or I believe some corporate source about something. You know, at some point, artificial intelligence can process the data, but what kind of data? How they get this data? This is now the old question. When you lower the cost of production, you don't have enough journalists to fact check something, you will get the dominance of some powerful actors, political or economic, to basically maintain their agenda in the news production. Now, this is the old political economy argument. If you shows that in the interest of economic and political actors, it's in their interest to automate journalism, because then they will not have to deal with the so-called watchdog journalism role. So there are many problems with relying completely on artificial intelligence when it comes to some sensitive questions, political, social issues. Right now, they're more like sport games and stuff like that. But eventually, if they want to expand into some more sensitive fields, politically, economic fields of journalism, it could create problems, because who is, what is the agenda of a person who programmed this automated journalist algorithm, so let's just see what I wrote here, what you mentioned also, that well, let's finish with lead. But again, it is cultural attitude, but I think even in South Korea, it depends on why they believe. It depends on their political situation, or in any other country, why they believe more to the technology than to some kind of media outlets. Again, it is a question whether it's maybe media organizations were already more biased. There are a lot of alternative channels, social media, etc. They're trying to get back this idea of authority, media authority, basically authority of the most mainstream media channels, and I'm not sure that they can achieve it with the automation. Maybe it's some other way to do it.